Envelope was thick, too thick. I remember standing in the lawyer's office in downtown Chicago, my hands trembling as I turned it over. My name was printed on the front in elegant script. Maria Santos, the cleaning lady, that's what I'd been for 10 years, that's who I thought I was to him. Mrs. Santos, the lawyer said, adjusting his glasses. Before you open that, I need to show you something. He turned his laptop toward me, and my entire world collapsed. On the screen, I saw myself scrubbing floors, folding laundry, crying in the bathroom when I thought no one could see me. 10 years of footage, every single day. He had watched me, all of it. Every moment I believed I was alone. Let me take you back to where this began. I was 32 years old when I first walked up the stone driveway of the Whitmore estate in Lake Forest, Illinois. It was February. Snow clung to the evergreens, and my breath hung in the cold air like smoke. The mansion looked like something from a magazine. 3 stories of gray stone and glass with windows that reflected the winter sky like frozen tears. I needed this job, desperately. My husband, Carlos, had left 6 months earlier. No warning, just a note on the kitchen counter and an empty checking account. I had 2 children to feed. Alina was 7, Miguel was 4. The agency had called me that morning. The Whitmore estate needs a housekeeper. The owner is rarely there. He travels constantly. You'd be alone most of the time. Alone sounded perfect. I rang the doorbell and a man in his 60s answered. Thin, precise. His gray suit was immaculate. You must be Maria, he said. I'm Gerald, the estate manager. Mr. Whitmore won't be meeting with you today. He's overseas. That's fine, I said, though part of me wondered about a man who would hire someone without ever seeing their face. Gerald led me through the house. The ceilings stretched 20 feet high. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors that clicked beneath my shoes. Mr. Whitmore is a private man, Gerald explained. He values discretion above all else. I understand, do you? Gerald paused at the base of a sweeping staircase. He has cameras throughout the property, security purposes. You should know that going in. My stomach tightened. Cameras, standard for estates this size, exterior primarily, a few in common areas. I nodded, though something about the way he said it felt incomplete. The pay is generous. Gerald continued. Full benefits, a cottage on the property for you and your children. I nearly gasped. A cottage. Mr. Whitmore believes in taking care of his staff. That night I sat in my cramped apartment and stared at the wall. Alina was asleep on the fold-out couch. Miguel's little feet stuck out from under his blanket. I thought about what it would mean. A safe home. A fresh start. I called Gerald the next morning and accepted. 3 weeks later, we moved into the groundskeeper's cottage at the edge of the Whitmore property. It had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a window overlooking a garden, and heat that actually worked. Alina ran through the rooms laughing. Mom, is this real? Is this actually ours? It's ours, I said, though I knew nothing in this world was ever really yours. Not safety, not love, not even the truth about why a billionaire would give a stranger everything she needed. But I didn't question it. I should have. The first year passed in a blur of polishing silver and scrubbing toilets. Mr. Whitmore remained a ghost. I saw photographs of him throughout the mansion. Handsome, late 50s. Silver hair swept back from a sharp face. In every picture he stood alone. No wife, no children, just empty rooms and expensive art. He travels constantly, Gerald reminded me whenever I asked. Business in Tokyo, meetings in London. He's rarely in the States. I learned the rhythms of the house, which floorboards creaked, which windows stuck in summer, which room had once belonged to a woman whose clothes still hung in the closet, untouched, like she might walk in any moment. I never asked about her. Some questions aren't meant to be answered. At night, I would sit in the cottage with my children and feel something I hadn't felt in years, peace. Alina was thriving in her new school. Miguel had made friends with the gardener's grandson. I was saving money for the first time in my life, but sometimes, late at night, I would feel it, the sensation of being watched. I told myself it was nothing. Old houses creak, shadows move, loneliness plays tricks on the mind. One evening in March, I was cleaning the library on the 2nd floor. Rain streaked the windows and the room smelled of leather and old paper. I reached up to dust a high shelf and knocked over a picture frame. It shattered on the floor. I froze. The photograph showed a young woman, dark hair, warm eyes. She was laughing at whoever held the camera, her hand raised as if to wave them away. On the back, someone had written, "My sweet Angela, forever J. James Whitmore." I cleaned up the glass carefully and returned the photograph to its place. But I couldn't stop thinking about her, about the clothes in the closet, about the empty rooms. Who was she? And where had she gone? The next week, I overheard Gerald on the phone in the kitchen. "Yes, sir, she's adjusting well. The children are healthy. No, she hasn't asked questions." He paused. "Of course. I'll send the weekly report." I stepped back, my heart pounding. Weekly reports about me. That night I lay awake and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in the darkness of the mansion, cameras blinked their silent red lights, but I stayed. What choice did I have? The job paid well. My children were happy, and running from shadows had never solved anything. Besides, I told myself it was just security, just cameras, nothing personal. Years passed. Elena grew into a teenager with her father's stubborn streak and my mother's sharp tongue. Miguel discovered basketball and spent every free moment shooting hoops in the driveway, and I cleaned. I cleaned until my knuckles ached, until I knew every corner of that mansion better than I knew my own face, until the house began to feel less like a job and more like a silent companion. Sometimes I talked to the empty rooms. Good morning, I would say to the library. Beautiful day, I would tell the kitchen windows. I'm tired, I would whisper to the bathroom mirror, just speaking to hear a voice, just filling the silence. I didn't know that hundreds of miles away a man was listening, watching, learning the rhythm of my loneliness and waiting. The first time I saw James Whitmore in person, I almost didn't recognize him. It was August. I was on my hands and knees in the foyer, scrubbing a stain from the marble when the front door opened. I looked up, and there he was, older than his photographs, thinner, but those eyes, blue as winter ice. "You must be Maria," he said quietly. I scrambled to my feet, wiping my hands on my apron. "Mr. Whitmore, I didn't know you were coming. Gerald doesn't know everything." He stepped past me without another word and disappeared up the staircase. That night I sat in the cottage, replaying the encounter in my mind. Something about the way he'd looked at me, not like a man seeing his housekeeper for the first time, like a man seeing an old friend or a ghost. Over the following weeks, James Whitmore remained at the estate. I would see him in passing, a figure in the library, a silhouette on the terrace. He never spoke more than a few words, but I felt him watching, always watching. One evening I was collecting laundry from the upstairs hallway when I heard a sound, low, broken, crying. I followed the sound to a room I never entered, the master bedroom. The door was ajar. Through the gap, I could see James Whitmore sitting on the edge of his bed, a photograph clutched in his hands. His shoulders shook. It was her, Angela. I should have walked away, should have given him his privacy. Instead, I pushed the door open. "Mr. Whitmore?" He looked up, his face wet with tears. For a long moment, neither of us moved. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I heard. It's fine." His voice was hoarse. "You can come in." I hesitated, then stepped inside. The room smelled of dust and lavender. On the nightstand sat the same perfume bottle I had dusted 100 times without ever moving. "She was my wife," James said, still staring at the photograph. "Angela, she died 11 years ago. I didn't know what to say. Cancer, it was quick in the end, but the years before," he stopped, his jaw tightening. "I wasn't there. I was always working, always gone, and when she needed me most," his voice broke. I sat down beside him, not as his housekeeper, just as a person who understood loss. "My husband left us," I said quietly. "Not the same, I know, but the feeling of being abandoned, of wondering what you could have done differently. I understand that." He looked at me then, really looked. "I know," he said. Something in his voice made me freeze. "What do you mean?" He was silent for a long time. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, cicadas sang their summer song. "Maria, there's something I need to tell you, something I should have told you years ago." My heart began to pound. "Those cameras," he continued. "They weren't just for security." I stood up. "What are you saying?" "I watched you every day for years." His eyes held mine. "Not because I was spying, not because I wanted to control you." "Then why?" He reached into his nightstand and pulled out a worn leather journal. "Because of Angela, because of what she asked me to do before she died." He opened the journal to a page filled with handwriting I didn't recognize, and there, written in fading ink, I saw my name, Maria Santos. My hands were shaking as I took the journal. The handwriting was soft, feminine, the loops and curves of someone who wrote slowly, carefully, savoring each word. Angela's mother was from Mexico, James explained. She grew up poor, worked as a maid for wealthy families her whole life. Angela never forgot where she came from. I turned the pages, letters, dozens of them, all addressed to someone named Maria. Before she died, James continued, "Angela made me promise something. She said she'd been given so much in life, money, privilege, love, and she wanted to give it back. I don't understand. She chose you." The words hung in the air. Angela spent her last months researching, looking for someone who reminded her of her mother, someone struggling, someone honest, someone who deserved a chance. "But how?" "Your case came through a charity we funded, single mother, 2 children, abandoned by her husband, working 3 jobs just to survive." He paused. "Angela saw your photograph and said, 'That's her, that's the one.'" I stared at the journal. On one page, Angela had written, "She has kind eyes, the kind of eyes that have seen too much pain and still choose to hope." Tears burned my throat. "She wanted you to have everything," James said. "The job, the cottage, the stability. She wanted your children to grow up safe." "And the cameras," he looked away. That was me. Angela asked me to watch over you, to make sure you were okay, but He stopped, his voice breaking. I couldn't let go. Watching you became the only connection I had left to Angela. Anyone? I should have been angry, violated. Instead, I felt something I couldn't name. You watched me grieve, I whispered. You watched me struggle. You watched me cry in the bathroom when I thought no one could see. I know, and you never said anything. What could I say? Hello, my dead wife picked you out of a charity case file, and I've been watching you clean my toilets for a decade. A sob escaped my chest, but it wasn't grief, it was relief. For 10 years, I had wondered why. Why this job? Why this cottage? Why a billionaire would care about a cleaning lady and her children? Now I knew. Someone had seen me. Before I ever set foot in this mansion, someone had looked at my photograph and thought, she deserves better. Angela believed in second chances, James said quietly. She believed that kindness given freely could change a life. She was right. We sat in silence as the evening light faded. There's more, James finally said. The journal, the last entry. Angela wrote it the night before she died. He handed me the journal, open to the final page. I read the words through blurred vision. My dearest James, by the time you read this, I'll be gone, but promise me you'll find her, watch over her. And when the time is right, give her what I never had, time, peace, a life without fear. And if one day you find yourself lonely, remember that kindness is the only bridge between souls. Maybe, just maybe, she'll remind you how to live again. I closed the journal, and for the first time in 10 years, I understood. This had never been about cleaning. It had been about connection. The weeks that followed changed everything. I stopped being Mr. Whitmore's housekeeper. I became his friend. We would sit on the terrace in the evenings, watching the sun sink behind the trees. He told me about Angela, their travels, their dreams, the children they never had, and I told him about Carlos, about the betrayal, about the nights I had lain awake wondering if I would ever feel whole again. You know what Angela would say? James asked one evening. What? She'd say that broken things can become stronger, that the cracks let the light in. I smiled. She sounds like she was wise. She was far wiser than me. That autumn, James made a decision. He called me into the library where Gerald and a lawyer I didn't recognize were waiting. Maria, I've been thinking about the future, about what happens to all of this when I'm gone. Mr. Whitmore, James, I hesitated. You don't need to. I do. He handed me a document. Angela wanted you to have more than a cottage and a job. She wanted you to have security, real security. I looked at the document. It was a trust in my children's names, enough money for Alina to go to any college she wanted, enough for Miguel to follow his dreams, enough for me to never worry again. I can't accept this. You already have, James said gently. The moment you walked into this house and decided to stay despite everything, you earned it. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Angela believed that people are meant to help each other, James continued. That wealth isn't a prize, it's a responsibility. She gave me everything, Maria. And now, through you, I can finally give something back. I looked at him, this man who had watched me through cameras for 10 years, who had cried alone in his room, who had loved a woman so deeply that her wishes became his reason for living. Thank you, I whispered. No, his eyes glistened. Thank you for reminding me what it feels like to be human. Alina graduated from Northwestern University 3 years later. She became a social worker helping families just like ours. Miguel earned a basketball scholarship to UCLA. He called me every Sunday, his voice full of life. And James lived another 7 years. I was there when he passed, sitting beside his bed, holding his hand as the monitors beeped their final song. His last words were simple. Tell Angela I kept my promise. I'm 62 now. I still live in the cottage on the Whitmore estate. Sometimes I walk through the mansion at sunset, touching the walls that hold so many memories. And sometimes I swear I can feel them watching. Not the cameras, not cold, unfeeling lenses, but something warmer. Two souls who taught me that kindness is never wasted. That being seen, truly seen, is the greatest gift. And that love, even from beyond the grave, can change a life forever. This is my story. A story about cameras and secrets, about loss and redemption, about a woman named Angela who chose me from a photograph and gave me a future. I share it now because stories like this deserve to be told. Because somewhere out there, someone is struggling, wondering if anyone sees them. And I want them to know. Someone does. Someone always does. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and visit the channel for more real-life stories.